When someone knocks at his door, WD-CPD policeman Hank Greeley is having the time of his life in a hotel room with a Russian hooker. He opens the door to see two police officers standing outside his door. Greeley is not interested in small talk, but the men barge in, claiming they must ask him something. Greeley throws a tantrum, threatening to have the officers fired and claiming they cannot harass or enter his room without a signed warrant. Unfortunately, his outburst only amuses the men. It turns out that the two men, Jimmy Bobo and his partner and best friend Luis Blanchard, are hitmen hired to kill Greeley. Luis shoots Greeley, but Greeley flees and retaliates. He jumps on Luis and starts beating him, managing to grab the gun. Before he can kill Luis, Jimmy intervenes with a fatal shot to the head. Jimmy hears some whimpering coming from the bathroom and finds the Russian hooker. He's about to kill her but relents when he sees the tattoo of a cougar on her back. He lets the hooker, Lola, go, ascertaining that she will keep silent about what has happened. Later, Jimmy and Luis go to a bar to celebrate their kill, not noticing another hitman silently observing them. As the night progresses, Jimmy excuses himself to use the restroom. Luis is still drinking when someone accidentally spills a drink on him. Before he can react, the hitman stabs him severely, leaving him dead. He walks to the bathroom and starts assaulting the unsuspecting Jimmy. Luckily, Jimmy quickly defends himself, resulting in a fierce fight. The hitman leaves after failing to kill Jimmy. While Jimmy mourns the loss of his partner, WD-CPD detective Taylor Kwan arrives in New Orleans to investigate Hank Greeley's death. It turns out that the two were partners but had a falling out that resulted in Hank being disgracefully discharged. Kwan learns from Lieutenant Lebreton that Lola has confirmed Greeley's assassination. He also learns about a second body brought in later that night. Kwan visits the morgue where Louise's body is being held. He quickly discovers that Louise had something to do with Greeley's death. He also feels that the two murders are connected, but does not understand how yet. Kwan manages to trace Louise's information on the police database. Fortunately, Louise has been known to associate with James Bonomo, aka Jimmy Bobo. Kwan finds out all he can about Jimmy and arranges to meet him at a pub he often hangs out at. Kwan tells Jimmy that he knows about his occupation as a hitman and his last case. However, he reveals that he is not interested in bringing Jimmy in for Greeley's murder. Instead, he wants the two to work together and find out who did the hiring, as the same person who is responsible for Louise's death. Jimmy contemplates the offer for a few minutes before blatantly refusing, as he does not work with cops. Jimmy leaves the pub, and Kwan follows him to the parking lot. Unfortunately, Kwan is attacked by two corrupt cops who want him to stop investigating Greeley's death. Kwan is shot in the shoulder, but before much harm can be done, Kwan manages to disarm one cop and gun down the other. Luckily, Jimmy hits the other cop with his car and grabs Kwan. He takes him to a tattoo parlor where a beautiful woman, Lisa, treats Kwan's wound. Lisa is a former med student, so she retrieves the bullet and mends Kwan's shoulder. After they leave the parlor, Kwan teases Jimmy about Lisa wondering what Jimmy gives her to keep her loyal. He makes fun of Jimmy's personality, claiming that no woman can love him for it. Kwan quickly shuts his mouth when he learns that Lisa is Jimmy's estranged daughter. The two have been at odds, as Jimmy was never a present father when Lisa was growing up. Jimmy is a retired veteran. Meanwhile, the other hitman, Keegan, meets up with his boss, who turns out to be Robert Morell, a local land developer. Morell has some shady dealings, which his lawyer Marcus Baptiste covers up. Marcus reveals that Greeley had tried to blackmail Morell since he had a file containing Morell's illegal operations. Unfortunately, Greeley had left the file with local mobster Baby Jack. Marcus wants Keegan to retrieve the file and kill anyone who knows what it contains. Keegan quickly visits Baby Jack's gang hideout. He viciously kills all the gang members and leaves one alive so he can open the safe. Keegan quickly retrieves the needed file and proceeds to kill the other gang members, leaving behind a trail of death and destruction. Jimmy and Kwan visit another massage parlor where they interrogate Ronnie Earl, as he was the man that hired Louise and Jimmy to kill Greeley. Ronnie confesses that he had hired the two on Morell's behalf and knows nothing about the later assassination of Louise or the attempt on Jimmy. Ronnie slyly tries to kill Jimmy, but Jimmy quickly defends himself and kills the man first. Later, Jimmy argues with Kwan as he finds that Kwan has jammed his gun. This would have cost him his life earlier. Jimmy will work with Kwan on the condition that he understands that they are on two different sides. While Kwan wants to arrest the gang members and bring them to justice, Jimmy has stayed in the town long enough to know that all hands can be greased, and the easiest way to stay alive is by killing your enemy. Jimmy wants Kwan to do his job, but he has to let Jimmy do his as well. Kwan agrees to the terms, and the two find out more about Morell and Marcus. They realize that Marcus will host a costume party that evening, and they decide to crash it. Jimmy and Kwan locate Marcus and kidnap him after knocking him out. out. They take him to Jimmy's house and restrain him on the chair, interrogating him when he wakes up. Marcus, who has no sense of loyalty for anyone but himself, quickly starts talking. Keegan is an ex-mercenary who has had his missions worldwide, including in Central Africa and Lebanon. Marcus is pretty confident that Keegan will find him and kill the two, so he continues talking. He reveals that Greeley's bribery file contained information about Morell's payoffs to various senators and Congress members, as well as his development plans to fraudulate the city. He plans to acquire housing projects in the crime-filled estates and demolish them to build office buildings. This will give him a sleek profit. Jimmy takes an interest in Marcus's necklace. He opens it to find a flash drive. Marcus has a record of Morell's shady dealings, which he keeps as leverage. Marcus continues blabbering, which annoys Jimmy, who shoots him in the head. Quan is agitated by this, but has little time to act as Keegan and his men have managed to locate Marcus's phone signal to the apartment. Another gunfight ensues, with Keegan and his men shooting anyone in their way. After a series of gunshots are fired in the apartment, Quan and Jimmy manage to escape. They detonate a bomb in the apartment, which kills most of Keegan's men. Jimmy's demeanor has changed, and he wants revenge against the men behind his misery. Coincidentally, something snaps inside Keegan, and he badly wants Jimmy's blood. However, Quan is tired of Jimmy's barbarism and disregard for human life. He decides to solve the case on his own and leaves Jimmy to get revenge as he intends. Quan reaches out to Lieutenant Leberton, hoping that he will aid his mission. However, Quan is in for a rude surprise when the lieutenant tries to kill him, as he is also on Morell's payroll. Luckily, Jimmy has followed Quan, so he saves the latter and kills the lieutenant. He cautions Quan to be careful as he cannot trust anyone blindly. Jimmy might be a professional killer, but at least he goes for those he has a vendetta with. Meanwhile, Keegan looks into Jimmy and learns about his daughter Lisa. He has his men kidnap Lisa and calls Jimmy, intending to trade Lisa for the flash drive. Jimmy agrees to the terms and meets with Keegan at an abandoned warehouse. Jimmy meets up with Keegan, some henchmen, and Morell in the warehouse. Morell might be a shady businessman, but he is not as ruthless a criminal as Keegan. This is why he agrees to let Jimmy and Lisa go after he gets the flash drive. This action profoundly angers Keegan, who is out for blood after seeing Jimmy kill many of his men. Morell slyly remarks that he let Jimmy go as he has leverage, while Keegan, on the other hand, does not. Keegan quickly turns on his boss and kills him and his men before going after Jimmy. He wants hand-to-hand combat with Jimmy, so he retrieves some fire axes and gives Jimmy one. A serious fight ensues, with both parties enduring deep wounds. Luckily, Jimmy manages to stab Keegan in his throat. This is not enough to take the giant down. Jimmy is about to give up when Quan shoots Keegan dead from afar. Quan had infiltrated the building earlier and started taking out Keegan's men. He also grabs the flash drive. Finally, he shoots Quan in the shoulder so that it appears that Quan has failed to arrest him. Jimmy also advises Quan to let him take the credit for all of the murders, including the ones that Quan had committed. Jimmy wants to leave, but Lisa decides to stay back and keep Quan alive while they wait for the police officers to show up. Jimmy is at a bar when Quan meets him. He reveals that he never mentioned Jimmy's involvement in the murders to his superiors. However, he wants Jimmy to straighten his act, as he cannot always cover for him. Jimmy slyly asks Quan to try and arrest him before walking away.